right? So yeah, Sanjana, the system by which companies are directed and controlled. Okay, then then what else the corporate governance is all about? Because I want you guys to be have some feel on corporate governance every day. This is not something to be complete the syllabus, because even a day is enough for me to complete the entire syllabus. We have a very quality time, because online teaching is something, to have a very quality time of being a professor as well as being a student, because your focus will be more on online session than offline session. How many of you agree with me? Your focus will be more on online session than offline session. How many of you agree with me? Darshan says yes. 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 Because in online session, really we are fortunate, we doesn't have any kind of distractions. We can completely focus, but here attitude matters. Once you are ready, then there will be a quality time for you. If you are not ready, of course, there will not be a quality time, and you will be blaming of online sessions, and you will say that I have not learned anything in my MBA, right? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Neha, I've mentioned corporate governance is a combination of rule, process of law by which business are operated, regulated, or control. Okay, Prince Idakar, corporate governance is rules, regulations, practices, process used to manage company. Of course, whatever you say is right. Don't forget the rules of corporate governance. Whatever you say is right, and you speak. This is the rule number 1 and 2. And when we talks about corporate governance, as I discussed with you a lot, again, I'm in a position to explain you what is corporate governance. Corporate governance is a kind of COVID shield or co-vaccine, right? It will be protect you from the viruses. This is corporate governance is something like a vaccination for the industry, for the company, right? It will protect from the negative things. It will protect from the viruses. How COVID shield and Covaxin is protecting people from the coronavirus, the same way, corporate governance is also a system practice, a system process to protect from the negative side of the people. Once the organization is completely set with corporate governance policies and procedures, then automatically nothing will be, affect the organization. This is the purpose and objective of corporate governance. I'm giving you one more important terminology for corporate governances. Corporate governance, not only a control mechanism, corporate governance, not only a direction, corporate governance is also something like a shield to the organization. Shield, SHIELD, shield to the organization. What is the purpose of shield? Shield will protect us from the offended things or negative things, right? And the last session, I'll just share my PPT for your visibility. My screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
that's great. So the last week, right, we have started unit number 3, and we have seen who are the shareholders and who are the stakeholders, right? And who are the shareholders? A person who is having a share in the organization, right? Those he or she can call it as shareholders. Who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders, maybe the customers, maybe the dealers, maybe the employees, right? Those who are having connection with the organization, those people call it as a stakeholders. So the next one, we have some of the roles of shareholders because there are two types of shareholders. One is common shareholder and another one is preferred shareholders. The differentiation between common shareholder and preferred shareholder is voting rights. Common shareholder have a right to vote on any matters about the company concern, right? So whatever company is having, right, whatever the matters or resolutions or the publications happens in the organization, they have rights to vote, and preferred shareholder there is no voting rights. This is the major differentiation between the types of shareholders. And there are some of the rights of shareholders. Shareholder can appoint the directors, they can take action against the directors. And one more thing here, majority speaks. If you have a majority shares, then you can go for all kind of utilization of rights. And shareholder have a right to appoint the company auditors and voting rights, as I told you, and right to call for general meetings. And right to call for general meetings also having some of the procedures. If you have to have 5% of shares, then you will have some rights. If you have 10% of the share in the company, you will have different rights. Then it will be differentiate in the terms of percentage of shares. And you will have a right to inspect registers and books, right? And right to get copies of financial statements. Of course, it is common to everyone because every shareholders are able to receive financial statements from the organization in a quarterly basis, right? And winding up of the company, of course, this is also possible for shareholders. And this is the consolidation report of what are the shareholders' rights: right to receive income, right to vote, right to appoint proxy, and rights given by statutory laws, right? This is the consolidation image of rights of shareholders, right? And later in part, this is the differentiation between the shareholders and stakeholders, right? And stakeholders is consist of customers, employees, suppliers, government are also a part of stakeholder list. And shareholder, those who have legally own shares of stock of a joint stock notes company, right? And majority shareholder, as I told you, about 50% or more shares in the company. So if you have more than 50% of the company, because majority is 50% plus, not 50% minus. If it goes 1% minus from 50, then you are not being considered as a majority shareholder, you will be minority shareholder, right? Majority means 50% and above, right? And if you have a majority of shareholders, because most of the public limited company, no, if you take Reliance Industry or Tata groups and all, the top people, right, having the majority of the shares. Because if there is no majority of the shares with Mukesh Ambani, then there is a problem with taking decisions. There are problem with passing the resolution. There is problem with starting of new ventures, because the majority is not with us. Then whatever thing I cannot implement, then I'll go for a big process of discussing with the entire people. There may be lakhs and lakhs of people, maybe the shareholders. Then I'll go and get their concern, and I'll have to convince, and many things are happening. In similar way, if I have the majority in my hand as a Mukesh Ambani, then I'll just pass the resolution. Then majority votes comes because I'm having the majority. Then automatically I can pass the resolution. I can take a decision. I can go for any kind of expansion and implementation and takeover of any organization at any time, right? This is the power of majority of shareholders. And when you have the majority, you can appoint directors and you can remove directors, and you can give authority to the directors. You know what happened in Tata groups? There was an issue with the top management level. Then I think Cyrus Mystery, I think the name of the ex-chairman of the Tata group, Then the Ratan Tata and other teams and all, they found something difficult and problem with this management. So immediately, within short span of time, they have removed him from the top management level. Then they appointed Srinivasan as the chairman of Tata Groups. So why how this happens? If the top management, including Ratan Tata and the team, doesn't have the majority, then they cannot remove Shiraz Mistry from the topmost position. Though they have majority of the shares, so they have removed him from the top position. Then they can appointed immediately for the post of chairman from someone side, right? So this is the power of majority of holding a shares. And the minority, as I told you, you can call for a general body meeting. If you have 5% or more, 10% more, you can demand for voting, and 50% or more, you can apply to the court to object to a variation of share class rights, and more than 20% of shares in a company, you can block any resolutions, right? So everything is based on the Companies Act of 2013, right? This is the ownership structure of an organization, right? Because why I'm recalling the entire unit from beginning to end is most of the people was not attended last week's sessions. So for entire benefit of the students, so I'm discussing from the slide number 1 to the last one, right? Ownership structure is all about how organization is having the rights between the shareholders and the owners. Ownership structure having both internal and external, right? They have their own rights and duties, and shareholders also have their own rights and duties. And if you become a part of any company with a share, and you can be part of the ownership, and you can have and avail certain rights, right? This is the ownership structure. And next, we are moving into a new topic. Hello, am I meaningful to everyone? Your
Yes, sir.
understanding,
Yes,
your
Yes,
understanding.
sir.
yes, sir.
Yeah, that is more important,
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay, that's great. Okay, when we discuss about issues in corporate governance practices in India, and we have done our CIA one also in a case study. What are the practices happens in India related to corporate governance? And India, like a country, still having hundreds and hundreds of issues to implement corporate governance in every organization. And we all know very well about India is not completely organized industry pattern, because all the organizations are not being organized with the rules and regulations of central government. India having 30% of organized sector and still 70% are unorganized, right? For example, you just go to a Goburgaon bus stand and see how many the shops are being organized and connected with the government rules and regulations policies. And many street sellers are there, many people having no GST, and many people having no bill structure, right? They have not been part of any kind of government companies act, right? Many things. This is one example. If you just take the entire India, crores and crores of monies are making with unorganized sectors. So implementing corporate governance in India really facing a difficulties, right? But you just go out of India, in Western countries, everything is corporate governance. Because in India, we just started speaking only after globalization. When globalization happened? After 1990. And when we talk more about global corporate governance, only scandal happened with Satyam Computers in 2008. After that, we started speaking about corporate governance. And you may ask me, sir, after Satyam scandal, nothing scandal happened in corporate governance policies, of course, many scandals happen, still happening. Something, shown in the picture, and many things are not shown in the picture, right? So many banks having non-performing assets, big industries and all, they have taken loan from the bank and they have not paid even amount to the bank, and that reserves as non-performing assets. It's all because of corporate governance, wrong practices. And Nirav Modi, you can take, Kingfisher chairman, right? So anyone you can take. It's all because of corporate governance mispractices in the organization, right? And there are some of the companies still follows very good practices in corporate governance, right? And CIA 2 also I am going to have probably within this week or next week about some of the presentations, PowerPoint presentations, right? Probably we can evolve certain strategies to implement corporate governance in Indian companies. Your next CIA 2 will be strategy to, strategy to implement corporate governance in Indian companies. You understand? I'll just put it in a chat box also, because your next CAA you start prepare. Strategical framework for implementing corporate governance in Indian companies. Strategical framework for implementing corporate governance in Indian companies. I've just put it in a chat box. You have to present a PPT with your views along with the same team. Okay. You have to present a PPT with your views along with the same team. The CAA 1, whatever team presented, the same team is going to be present, CAA 2 also. That will be comfortable for every one of us. Okay. You understand, every one of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Aditya. Thank you, Naim Patel. Yes. Right. Please make note of it. Your next CIA 2 will be in the topic of strategical framework for corporate governance to implement in Indian companies. It should be a PPT format. You have to format what are the strategy can be possible to implement corporate governance in India from your understanding view. You may refer Google or refer books or whatever you refer, but I want your strategy for implementation of corporate governance. If your corporate governance is somewhat quality and best possibility to implement, we can also draft that strategies will directly forward to the government also. If your strategies are good, and the document will be in the name of you, will be directly forward to the government for strategic implementation of corporate governance. Okay, so you start work on it. And when we talk about the corporate governance, 1 minute. My screen is visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. There are some of the issues in corporate governance practices in India. The first and foremost issue is performance evaluation of directors. And see, government is telling to implement and practice corporate governance in the organization. And even companies are also started implementing such a practices for corporate governance. Again, there is an evaluation pattern disturbances in performance of the directors, right? See, as I told you, and most of the organization has been appointing directors based on their concern, based on their interest. I think no director, selection happens in the organization with any kind of right method, because whomever the majority shareholders feel those people are good, they'll be appointed as a director. Again, here the performance evaluation. What are the roles and responsibilities of directors? Whether they are performing as per their roles and responsibilities. Again, the evaluation pattern will become a very hectic to monitor, and true independence of directors, because independent directors, there will be a part of board of directors, we can appoint, right? But still there is no proper regulation of maintaining independent director. They're not being true to the organization, right? Because the board of directors, most of the company, I'm not telling all the companies, most of the companies, the directors, the board of directors are not properly following the rules and regulations. They'll be mostly based on the bias, right? So it has to be monitored and it has to be regulated in the organization. And removal of independent directors, again, it is a issues in corporate governance practices in India. We cannot easily remove independent directors. And accountability to stakeholders, right? As I mentioned, stakeholder means whomever have a connection with the organization, they call it as stakeholders. Then here accountability missing to the stakeholders. What are their responsibility? What kind of benefits we have to give to the stakeholders, right? Everything, it is starting from contacting them and fixing the price, and everything having some issues with the organization. And executive compensation, and what kind of compensation, right, to be given to the executives means directors and top level management. Again, the fixation of executive compensation also become a issues. And founders control and succession planning, of course. See, any company, it matters. If I, Prakash, have started a own company and to be listed in a public sector company, my company may be running with the support of shareholders, right? Even though I understood everything, but I'll not leave my ownership position to someone else, because this is my organization. Whatever happens in my organization based on my own concern and decisions, right? This is all about the founder's control, because this often happens in organization. Any organization matters, there will be a founder's control, right? That's what they will keep always majority shares. If the company, that's what most of the organization are not going for public sector. They'll be keep themselves as a private sector. That private means what? There will be one ownership or maybe partners, right? But public means everyone has become the owner, because the company is running by public funding through shares. And risk management, of course, when we implement corporate governance, then company will be in the risk, because they have to be highly transparent. Don't forget the three principles of corporate governance. What are the three principles of corporate governance?
Transparency, accountability, and
Transparency,
independence.
accountability.
What is it? Accountability.
And
Transparency,
independence.
Okay.
independence.
Last one is the independence. But the one word always I keep in my mind is transparency. Because being a public limited company and being implementing corporate governance practices, you should be transparent to everyone. You should maintain the records and process to be 360 degree of transparent. Anytime anyone may ask you anything, you should be transparent. You should be available. It should be available. You cannot hide anything. But that stage in India may not be possible because people always try to hide something, right? But government is taking very hard effort to implement transparency in organization. Let's see, probably it's years together will take to implement transparency in organization, right? Because that is always on the table and always off the table. And when considering the risk management, again, it will be the difficult part in the organization. And the next one is privacy and data protection. As I told you, the privacy means there should be a control by someone. But corporate governance is not privacy. Corporate governance is transparency and data protection. Of course, there are many data manipulation happens. Data manipulation, right? So, for if in example, many of you have done your SIP, right? How many of you have done your SIP wholeheartedly and really you have did all the data as per the data collection? My question to every one of you. How many of you have put your data from the actual point of your data collection? How many of you? Can I get a response? How many of your SIP data has been actually made up and how many of your data are manipulated? Manipulated means fake. I'll put 10, 15, 20 or 50, 100 or something. Any responses? But not an issue actually, because this is not happening to you alone. It is a pan-India issue. Even any project happens in, right? They'll go for some kind of hide process, right? And
So my project is totally on secondary data. Some of the
yeah,
data from primary, which I really real bills are taken and calculated the GST from that.
okay, that's great, that's great. So I know that no, some of the exceptionals there, but I don't say this is wrong or right because I'm not in a position of judgment. But based on your concerns, may right, may not right. But when it comes to the corporate governance, it should be highly, transparent. It should be available. It should be based on reality. But in Indian companies, the data, many things are not happening appropriately, right? So that takes too much of time because this is a root cause issue. This is the problem with the root of the organization because we have not considered because the tree has grown, right? When a seed have put it into the soil, it has to be cultivated and fertilized and taken care from inch by inch of its growth. But once it has become a big tree, then how can you take care of that entire things? But in India, like a country, everything has become like a tree, big tree, so that taking positive things, especially in corporate governance, feels government very difficult, right? That's what anything's to be happens, so that will be very big impact, right? And again, the data protection also become the issue because people shows because see how organizations are protecting and misusing the corporate governance because they have appointed their own board of directors, they have appointed their own board of accountants, that means auditors, they, whomever being part of the legal committees, they have appointed their own concern, right? Then automatically what the executives will do, executive will be do for the happiness of the founders, right? Then because they are legally, agreed and legally, right? They are legally, protected people. So there is no way of bringing out the great things. Excuse me, I'll just. Then the last one is board's approach to corporate social responsibility. This is the last issue we are facing, corporate governance practices in India. And the corporate, how much percentage a company should, implement for CSR practices? Any of you know this? Hello? Is it 2%? Is it 2%? Any other responses? Any other responses? Is it right 2%? Yes. So 2% of their total income to be spent for corporate governance, not corporate social responsibility practices. Again, companies are showing 2%. That means what? If the income of the organization will be 1,000 crores, then how much amount will be for CSR activities in 2%? Probably 20 crores. No, yes, I think 20 crores. Yeah, 20 crores they have to be invest for corporate social responsibility practices. But they'll prepare the document, but we don't know exactly whether the prepared document has been put it into the reality or not, right? So